My disabled daughter was only 8 years old, sweet, soft-spoken, and moving slowly with her small leg braces. When the world went silent around our house, I called her name. No answer. Her wheelchair lay on its side near the garden. Her shoes were still by the swing. Her favorite stuffed animal sat abandoned on the grass. Then I heard it. A faint, desperate scratching beneath the soil. My blood turned cold. I fell to my knees and started digging with my bare hands, dirt flying everywhere, my heart pounding like it was trying to break free from my chest. Tiny fingers pushed through the soil. A muffled cry escaped from underground. My daughter was buried alive, and when I looked up, panting, covered in dirt, my hands shaking, I saw her, Karen. The HOA psycho stood there with a shovel, smiling like she had cleaned up a piece of trash instead of harming a child. "Rules are rules," she said calmly. "Hazards must be removed." She had no idea the child she buried was the police chief's daughter. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from, and please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My disabled daughter was only 8 years old, sweet, soft-spoken, and moving slowly with her small leg braces, when the world around our house suddenly felt too quiet. It was the kind of silence that doesn't belong in a place where a child is playing. The kind of silence that makes a parent's heart lurch because it isn't peaceful. It's wrong. I called her name once, then twice. Still no answer. The wind brushed through the backyard trees, carrying nothing but stillness. Her tiny shoes lay by the swing, placed neatly the way she always left them. Her wheelchair, her only real way to move across the yard, was tipped over on its side as if something violent had interrupted her play. Her favorite stuffed lion lay in the grass, face down, the way she never left it. My stomach tightened. Something was off. Terribly off. I stepped through the yard slowly at first, scanning every corner. My daughter wasn't the kind of child who wandered far. She stayed close, always careful, always aware of her limits. Her braces made her movement slower, deliberate. She never ran off, never hid, never played dangerous games. She didn't have the strength for it. So where was she? Then I heard it. A faint, desperate scratching beneath the soil. My blood froze. It wasn't an animal sound. It wasn't the wind. It was small, weak, human. My daughter. I dropped to my knees so fast my vision blurred. My hands clawed at the dirt without thought, without breath, without anything except a father's primal terror ripping through every nerve. Soil flew behind me in frantic handfuls as the scratching grew weaker, softer. "Baby, I'm here, I'm here!" My voice cracked. My hands shook as I dug faster, dirt caking beneath my nails, burning my skin. Time distorted. Every second felt like a lifetime. Sweat mixed with soil as panic clawed up my throat. Then, tiny fingers burst through the dirt, reaching, trembling, fighting for air. A muffled cry escaped from beneath the ground. My heart shattered. I scraped the soil away with frantic speed until her face appeared, dust-covered, tear-streaked, gasping desperately for breath. She wasn't just buried. She was terrified. She was struggling. She was alive only because she refused to give up. I lifted her out carefully, pulling her into my arms. She clung to my neck with all the strength her little arms could manage, shaking uncontrollably. Dirt fell from her hair onto my shoulder as she sobbed into my chest. "Daddy, Daddy." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Shh, I'm here," I said, my own voice breaking. "You're okay now, I've got you." Footsteps pounded behind me. My wife came running from the porch, her scream ripping through the air the moment she saw the overturned soil, the hole in the ground, the dirt covering our daughter's face. She dropped beside us, tears pouring as she stroked our daughter's cheek, whispering apologies, prayers, anything to calm her trembling. But the fear wasn't done yet, because when I raised my eyes, still holding my daughter close, I saw someone standing a short distance away. Not shocked, not horrified, not remorseful. Karen. The HOA psycho stood near the garden with a shovel in her hand, watching us as if she were simply observing a neighbor mowing the lawn. She looked calm, almost relaxed. Her expression was cold but satisfied, like she had checked something off a list. She tilted her head slightly and said, "You should thank me." My wife looked up in disbelief. "Thank you? You buried her." Karen lifted the shovel and tapped it against her shoe. She was lying in the community garden. "That area is not for disabled equipment or toys. It's against HOA rules." She fell, I shouted. She fell because she can't walk well. She needed help. She shouldn't have been there in the first place, Karen replied, shrugging. Hazards must be removed immediately. It's in the regulations. Hazards? She called my daughter, a disabled 8-year-old child, a hazard. Rage didn't explode inside me. It didn't come in fire or fury. It came cold, controlled, heavy, purposeful. The kind of rage that belongs to someone who knows exactly what needs to happen next. As my wife held our daughter tightly, whispering comfort, I stood slowly. Karen watched me, completely unafraid, because she believed she had done her duty. She believed her rules were more important than my child's life. She believed nothing would happen to her. I fixed the problem, she said proudly. The community will. Appreciate my dedication. My fists tightened. She didn't know who I was. Not yet. She didn't know why the ground trembling beneath her feet wasn't the wind. She didn't know why the neighbors were beginning to gather, eyes wide with horror instead of support. And she didn't know why her life was about to change forever. Because the child she buried alive, the child she called a hazard, the child she dismissed like an inconvenience, was the police chief's daughter, and I was done being patient. As I carried my daughter toward the house, her tiny fingers clung to the collar of my shirt as if letting go might pull her back into the darkness she had just escaped. Her small body shook with soft, uneven sobs. Dirt clung to her hair, her lashes, and the creases of her braces. Every few seconds she buried her face deeper into my chest, trying to hide from the world, and from the woman who had nearly taken her life. My wife walked beside me, one hand on our daughter's back, whispering quiet words of comfort. Her voice trembled with fear and fury, each breath sharp and fragile. She kept glancing behind us, terrified Karen might suddenly appear again with that shovel in her hand. And, of course, Karen did. She followed us across the lawn with slow, self-important steps, like she expected applause for her good deed. She swung the shovel casually at her side, tapping it against her leg as though she had just finished pruning bushes rather than burying a living child. That area is not for sitting, Karen declared loudly. It is not for disabled equipment. It is not for toys. It is certainly not for lying down. I simply moved her. It was nothing personal. Nothing personal. The words sliced at me harder than the shovel ever could. I stopped walking. Slowly, deliberately, I turned toward the woman who had just explained her attempted murder as if she had straightened a crooked law. An ornament. My daughter whimpered when she heard Karen's voice and curled into me tighter, her small hands trembling against my shoulder. Karen stood only a few feet away, arms crossed over her chest, her mouth twisted into an annoyed frown, as if my daughter's existence had inconvenienced her morning schedule. You people don't follow rules, she said sharply, and I am tired of being ignored. My wife spun toward her, eyes burning with a fury I had never seen in her before. She is 8 years old, she screamed. She cannot even walk without braces. She fell, do you understand that? She fell, Karen, and you buried her. Karen rolled her eyes, flicking dirt from her sleeve like it disgusted her. If she fell, then she shouldn't have been playing outside. That is unsafe. That is against the HOA guidelines. Therefore, it is my right to act. I am the HOA president. My jaw tightened until pain shot up into my temples. I tasted blood. My daughter whimpered again, tensing when Karen's tone rose. My wife wrapped an arm around her protectively, glaring at the woman who had treated our child like a piece of clutter to be cleaned up. If Karen had even looked confused, or guilty, or overwhelmed, I might have believed she acted in panic. But she didn't. Her face held nothing but annoyance. Annoyance that we dared question her judgment, annoyance that her authority was being challenged, annoyance that she had to explain her actions at all. That made her far more dangerous than a moment of madness. This was belief. This was conviction. This was a woman who truly thought she had done the right thing. The backyard gate squeaked open as neighbors stepped outside, drawn by the shouting. They gathered near the fence, whispering, staring at the overturned soil and the mound of fresh earth where my daughter had been, buried alive moments before. One woman gasped so loudly it echoed Dow. And the street. Oh my God. What did she do? A man whispered, Is the child okay? Dear God. Another neighbor covered her mouth with shaking hands. Karen, you didn't. Karen lifted her chin proudly. I prevented a violation, she announced, raising her voice so everyone could hear. "That is my job. If you people respected the rules, I wouldn't have to take such measures." The neighbors stared at her like she was a nightmare, one they had ignored for too long. My daughter pressed her face into my chest, whimpering as Karen continued lecturing the crowd. Even the sound of her voice traumatized her. I tightened my grip, holding her as gently and protectively as I could. Her breath was shallow, her heartbeat rapid against my chest. She needed safety, comfort, care. Karen gave her none of that. Karen offered only justification. "I have warned you all about misusing the community garden," she continued. "This is not my fault. The rules exist for a reason. If a child cannot move safely, then that child should not be outside without supervision." My wife snapped. "Do you hear yourself? You buried her. You put dirt over her face. She couldn't breathe." Karen shrugged again. Then perhaps she should not have fallen. It was clearly unsafe for her. I simply corrected the problem. Corrected? The word made my vision blur for a second. Behind us, the crowd murmured, horrified. Shock turned into anger. Anger turned into disbelief. People looked between Karen and me, unsure what to do, afraid of stepping into the storm forming in front of them. I looked down at my daughter. Her small fingers clung so tightly to my shirt they trembled. Her breath hitched each time she heard Karen speak. Her tears soaked into my collar. Something changed inside me at that moment. This wasn't going to be brushed off or excused. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't HOA business. This was a rhyme. And there was only one person in the neighborhood with the authority to handle a crime like this. Me. Karen, obsessed with her power, believed I was simply another homeowner she could bully into submission. She had no idea who she had just attacked. She had no idea whose daughter she had buried alive. She had no idea what line she had crossed. But she was about to, because the moment I saw my daughter trembling in my arms, I made a decision. Karen would never have the chance to hurt another child again. And I, whether she knew it or not, was the one man she should never have crossed. Karen didn't flinch when the first patrol car pulled into the street. In fact, she smiled, an unsettling, triumphant smile that didn't belong on the face of someone who had just buried a living child. She brushed her red jacket neatly, straightening the fabric with a sense of pride, as if she had done something noble. With her shoulders back and chin lifted, she folded her hands calmly in front of her, like she was attending an HOA meeting rather than a crime scene. She genuinely believed she was the hero. My officers stepped out, still adjusting their belts and radios, expecting some petty neighborhood dispute, maybe a noise complaint or a parking disagreement. But the moment their eyes landed on my daughter, her dirt-covered face, her trembling body, her tear-streaked cheeks, their expressions hardened instantly. You could see the realization hit them like a punch to the chest. Then they saw the shallow grave behind Karen, then the overturned soil, then the shovel gripped tightly in her hand, and their faces changed, their training switched on, their posture straightened, their hands moved to their radios without hesitation. One officer took a careful step forward, voice steady but tense. "Ma'am, put the shovel down." Karen scoffed loudly, rolling her eyes like a mother corrected for the 10th time by a child. "Why? I didn't do anything wrong. I'm the HOA president." My wife, who was still holding our daughter tightly against her chest, let out a broken sob. The sound tore through the air like a wounded animal calling for help. She buried my baby. She buried our daughter alive. The officers froze. Every muscle in their bodies locked. Every hint of patience vanished. In an instant, their jaws tightened. One officer whispered something urgent into his shoulder mic, while another shifted into a defensive stance, eyes locked on the shovel. But Karen just smiled. She actually smiled. "Oh, stop being dramatic," she said, waving a hand as if dismissing a silly rumor. She was in the way. I moved her to where she wouldn't violate the community guidelines. "You buried her," I said sharply, stepping toward her. Karen flicked her wrist in annoyance. "Well, she shouldn't have been lying on community property. The rules are very clear. If she can't walk properly, she should stay indoors or in a supervised area. I am allowed to take corrective action." Corrective action. That was the phrase she used. My officers stared at her in complete disbelief. One muttered under his breath, "What is wrong with this woman?" "Ma'am," the lead officer said, raising his voice, "turn around." "Now." "No." Karen said firmly, tightening her grip on the shovel. Absolutely not. I have not broken any laws. They have. They left their disabled child unattended. That is the crime here. You should be confronting them, not me. Her arrogance was breathtaking. I walked beside the officers, meeting their eyes for only a moment before reaching into my jacket. I pulled out my badge. Gold, polished, unmistakable. Karen's confident smirk faltered. Her eyes flicked to the badge, then back to my face, then to the badge again. Her expression shifted from irritation to confusion, to disbelief, to horror. No, she whispered. No, you're lying. You can't be. I am, I said coldly, and you're under arrest for attempted murder. The words hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, gripping the shovel with both hands as her composure cracked down the middle. You can't arrest me, she shouted. I am the HOA president. I keep this neighborhood in order. You almost killed a child, I replied. My child, she was a hazard. Karen screamed. I was enforcing rules. You buried her alive. Karen's face twisted into something ugly. Fear mixed with fury, desperation, fused with entitlement. She looked around wildly at the neighbors gathering at their fences, their faces pale and disgusted. She wasn't just losing control. She was realizing that she had never truly had it in the first place. Ma'am, drop the shovel, the officer commanded. No, she screamed. I am the authority here. I make the rules. You can't do this to me. Her voice rose to a shrill, panicked pitch. She clutched the shovel like it was a crown, like it was proof of her power. Then, in one frantic motion, she swung it. The officers moved instantly. 2 bodies collided with hers, tackling her to the ground before the shovel could do more than slice the air. Karen shrieked, a raw animal sound, as she kicked wildly, clawing at grass and gravel, screaming for someone, anyone, to defend her. You're all going to regret this, she screeched. Every one of you. I am the law here. Let go of me. But nobody listened. The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists, metallic and final. She thrashed, twisted, spit venom, but the officers held firm. They lifted her off the ground, dragging her toward the patrol car as the entire neighborhood watched in stunned silence. For the first time in years, Karen wasn't feared. She wasn't respected. She wasn't obeyed. She was exposed. And as the patrol car door shut behind her, muffling her screams, something heavier than silence settled over the street. For the first time in a long time, the neighborhood saw Karen clearly. Not as a leader, not as an authority, not as their HOA president, but as what she truly was, a dangerous criminal who almost buried a child alive. And now she was finally being treated like one. Karen's trial became something no one in the county could ignore. People whispered about it in grocery store aisles. Neighbors sent each other blurry cell phone photos of the crime scene. News vans parked along the street. Ike vultures waiting for a story to die. Even people who had never heard of our neighborhood before now knew its darkest secret. And still, somehow, Karen walked into her trial with her chin held high, unbent, unashamed, and unshaken. The courthouse lobby buzzed the moment she arrived. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward, microphones ready. But Karen didn't hide her face. She didn't cover her hands in shame. She walked as if someone were filming a documentary about her leadership. She wore a stiff navy blazer that matched the severity of her delusion. Her hair was brushed so meticulously that not a single strand dared to move. She carried herself the same way she did on HOA inspection days, shoulders back, lips pressed into a smug line, eyes filled with imagined authority. She genuinely believed she could justify burying a child. When we entered the courtroom, my wife held our daughter close. Even weeks after the incident, the trauma lingered in her small body. She flinched at loud sounds, clutched her stuffed lion everywhere she went, and woke crying from nightmares she could not explain. The gallery fell quiet as Karen was escorted to her seat, not because they respected her, because they were afraid of what she might say next. The judge, a stern, gray-haired man known for his fairness, glanced at the folder containing the charges. His eyebrows tightened, his jaw locked. It was clear he had never seen a case like this. When the trial officially began, the prosecutor wasted no time. He played video footage of the aftermath, my daughter's crying, the shallow grave, the shovel in Karen's hands. Neighbors testified about her behavior, her threats, her obsession with control. The courtroom absorbed every word. Then came the moment everyone had been dreading. Karen took the stand. She sat upright, hands folded neatly in her lap, looking like she was giving a speech at a homeowner's brunch. When the prosecutor asked her why she had buried my daughter, Karen didn't hesitate. She didn't falter. She didn't tremble. She answered with calm confidence, "I was removing a safety hazard." The room gasped. Even the court stenographer paused typing, eyes widening in disbelief. Karen continued, completely oblivious to the horror around her. Her wheelchair was abandoned. She was lying on the ground. "That is unsafe. I acted according to community guidelines. It was a simple enforcement." My wife choked on a sob beside me, biting her lip to stop herself from screaming. She clutched our daughter tighter, rocking her gently, tears dripping onto the child's hair. The judge stared at Karen for several long seconds, as if waiting for her to correct herself. "You buried a living child," he said slowly, emphasizing each word. Karen shrugged. "I didn't know she was alive," she said. "And if she was, then she shouldn't have been lying there." My hands clenched so tightly on my knees that my knuckles whitened. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitfield, do you understand that burying someone, even if they appear unconscious, is extremely dangerous?" Karen lifted her chin. "It is dangerous to violate rules. If we allow one exception, everything collapses. I was keeping order. This community needs structure. I am the only one who enforces it." The gallery erupted in gasps and whispers. One neighbor whispered loudly, "She's insane." Another covered her mouth, shaking her head, unable to believe what she was hearing. Even the defense attorney, the man paid to protect her, looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Karen, however, sat proudly, clearly waiting for applause. The judge leaned forward, his voice heavy with disbelief. "Mrs. Whitfield, are you telling this court that you believe burying a disabled child was a justified action?" Karen stiffened her spine. "If the child was lying where she shouldn't be, then yes, we must maintain order. If people followed the rules, I wouldn't have to take such measures." My wife broke. She began sobbing openly, unable to contain the pain of hearing her daughter's near death described as a measure. I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, grounding her as she cried. For the first time since the trial began, I saw the judge's eyes flicker, not with judicial restraint, but with genuine anger. He removed his glasses, set them down, and pinched the bridge of his nose, gathering himself before speaking. "Mrs. Whitfield," he said slowly, "you are not only dangerous, you are delusional." Karen gasped, offended. The judge continued, his voice firm and unyielding. "You nearly killed an innocent child, a disabled child, and your answer for this court is that she violated HOA rules? This was not enforcement. This was violence, cruelty, and absolute disregard for human life." Karen's jaw tightened. "I did my duty." "It was not your duty," the judge thundered. "It was your crime." The courtroom shook with silence. Karen's confidence flickered like a dying flame. The judge closed his folder. "Given the severity of your actions, your lack of remorse, and the danger you pose to society, this court denies bail. You will remain in custody pending sentencing." Karen lurched to her feet, shouting, "You can't do this! I am the HOA president. I make the rules. Deputies seized her arms as she kicked and screamed. Her blazer wrinkled, her hair fell out of place, and the mask she had worn for years finally cracked. You will all regret this," she shrieked as they dragged her toward the side door. "I will rewrite the rules. I will come back stronger. You haven't seen the last of me." The door slammed. The courtroom exhaled. My wife wept quietly beside me, clutching our daughter close. Our daughter, small and fragile, pressed her face to her mother's shoulder and reached her hand toward me, seeking reassurance. I took her hand gently. "It's over," I whispered. But deep in my chest, I knew something impossible to ignore. Karen might have lost the courtroom, she might have lost her title, she might have lost her freedom, but she had one thing left. People willing to follow her madness, and that meant our nightmare wasn't finished, not yet. Just when we thought the nightmare was finally ending, it twisted into something worse. Karen was gone, locked behind steel bars, stripped of her title, separated from the shovel she once treated like a symbol of her power. But her presence hadn't left the neighborhood. It lingered in the cracks of sidewalks, in the tense whispers between neighbors, in the way people avoided meeting our eyes. Everyone had seen what Karen did, but not everyone agreed she should be punished for it. Some believed she had simply gone too far. Some believed she had made a mistake. Some believed she was the neighborhood's protector. And some, the most dangerous group, believed she was a martyr. Those were the loyalists. They were the ones Karen had trained for years, molding them with fear and rewards. They admired her ruthlessness. They imitated her tone. They enforced her rules even when she wasn't watching. To them, Karen wasn't a criminal. She was the only person who kept order. And her arrest, in their twisted minds, was an attack on everything they stood for. And so their revenge began. The first sign was subtle, a notice taped to our door written in sloppy, rushed handwriting. "You destroyed our neighborhood. Leave before we make you." At first, I ignored it. People who act through anonymous notes rarely have the courage to do more. But the next morning, another appeared. "You put her in jail. Now we put you in the ground." This one was printed. Deliberate, planned. My wife's hands shook as she held it. Our daughter, resting in her lap, watched her mother's trembling fingers with innocent confusion. The sight made something deep inside me harden like stone. Then came the damage. My wife went outside to drive to the pharmacy one afternoon and found her tires slashed clean through. Not punctured, slashed. Someone had taken a blade to the rubber with precision. The cuts were long, even carved with hatred. She screamed for me, her voice breaking, our daughter startled by the sound. When I stepped outside and saw the car leaning awkwardly on deflated tires, a sharp, burning anger tore through my chest. This wasn't random vandalism. This was a message. Later that week, as the sun dipped behind the rooftops, I stepped out to check the mail. It was scattered across the porch, envelopes torn open, contents shredded like someone had stomped through them. In the middle of the pile lay a single object, small, metallic, cold, a fake bullet casing, placed neatly, purposefully, waiting to be found. My wife cried when she saw it. She pulled our daughter into her arms, holding her so close it looked like she was trying to fuse their bodies together. Our daughter didn't understand why her mother was shaking, why her father's jaw was clenched so tightly, why the house felt heavier each day. She only understood fear. I installed new cameras that night, top of the line, motion-triggered, night vision equipped. I wired our home like a fortress. Every corner, every entry point, every blind spot. Nothing moved without recording. Because the loyalists didn't know something crucial, they were being watched now. The footage didn't lie. It caught faces hiding under pulled-up hoods, gloved hands leaving threatening notes, a man crouching behind our mailbox, scanning the windows, a woman walking slowly past our driveway 3 times in the same hour, cars driving by slowly at midnight, headlights off. With each passing day, the loyalists grew bolder, more coordinated, more convinced they were untouchable. And then came the night. Everything changed. It was nearly 2 a.m. My wife and daughter were asleep. The neighborhood was silent except for the hum of streetlights. I sat awake in the living room, reviewing footage from earlier that evening, my senses sharp, my instincts louder than ever. A sudden beep sounded on the security monitor. Motion detected. Backyard camera. South fence. I moved before the second beep finished. Quiet, calm, controlled. I grabbed my weapon, checked the chamber, and slipped out the back door without making a sound. The backyard was dimly lit by the moon, the grass shimmering silver. At first, I saw nothing. Then, by the far fence, a shadow shifted. A man crouched low, spray can in his hand. The hiss of paint drifted through the air. He was writing something on the fence. I stepped closer, my eyes narrowing as the words came into view. "You should have let her rule. Free Karen. Move or suffer." My hands curled into fists. I stepped forward, my voice low and sharp. "Drop it." The man froze. His whole body stiffened. Slowly, he turned his head. His eyes widened when he saw me, standing in the dark, weapon at the ready, expression cold enough to freeze air. He ran, but panic makes fools slow. He tripped on the uneven patch of grass, barely a stumble, but enough. I was on him in seconds. One arm twisted behind his back, one knee in his spine, his mask ripped off in my hand. He screamed, not in pain, but in outrage. "She didn't deserve prison. She protected us. She protected the neighborhood. You ruined everything." He bucked his body, trying to throw me off. It didn't work. You don't understand, he shouted. Karen is the only reason this place was safe. Without her, we're nothing. You put her in jail. I snapped the cuffs onto his wrists. She put herself there, I said. You'll regret this, he spat. She'll come back. She always comes back. I hauled him to his feet, ignoring his empty threats. As I pulled him toward the street, my wife appeared at the back door, holding our daughter tightly, fear shimmering in her eyes. The man kept shouting, his voice cracking in desperation. You destroyed her, now we destroy you. His words didn't scare me. They angered me. He wasn't the mastermind. He wasn't the leader. He wasn't even smart. He was just the first loyalist stupid enough to get caught. And as I handed him over to the responding officers, watching him thrash like a wild animal, I realized something. This wasn't just revenge. This wasn't about Karen. This was a war she had started long before she touched my daughter. And now I was ending it, one loyalist at a time. The weeks that followed felt like living under dim, trembling light. The danger was mostly gone. Karen was behind bars. Some of her loyalists were arrested, and the rest had gone quiet after the man in the backyard had been caught. But the silence didn't bring peace. It wasn't calm. It was the silence after a storm, the kind that still carries the smell of lightning in the air. Our daughter woke at night crying, her small hands gripping her stuffed lion so tightly the seams stretched. Every time she heard footsteps, even mine, she flinched. She avoided the backyard entirely. Even if the grass was bright and sun-warmed, she shook her head and clung to my leg. My wife tried to hide her trembling, but I saw it. The way she double-checked every lock, the way she froze whenever someone knocked on the door, the way she watched the windows like shadows might peel away into human forms. Healing felt far away. One evening, after I tucked our daughter into bed, I found my wife sitting on the edge of the couch, staring at the front door with her hands clasped tightly. Her hair fell over her shoulders, slightly messy, but her eyes were clear despite the exhaustion. We can't stay here, she whispered. I sat beside her. I know. No, she said, shaking her head. I mean, we can't. Not even if things calm down, not even if everyone apologizes, not even if the HOA dissolves tomorrow. Every corner of this house, every inch of the yard, feels like that day. Feels like her. Her voice cracked, but she kept speaking, as if she had been holding the words in for too long. I can still hear our daughter's screams. I can still hear the dirt moving. I see the look on her face every time Karen spoke. This place doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like a reminder, and I don't want her growing up in a place that terrifies her. Tears welled in her eyes, soft and glistening. Can we leave? Please? I didn't need to think. I didn't need time to decide. I took her hand gently, squeezing it with the calm certainty of a man who had already made the decision the moment he pulled his child from the dirt. Yes, I said. Anywhere you feel safe? Her breath trembled with relief. She leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. Thank you. The next morning, I contacted a realtor. By noon, she sent us listings in peaceful neighborhoods miles away from the HOA-controlled street we once called home. The kind of places where children rode bikes freely, where neighbors talked over fences without fear, where rules were simple and kindness wasn't optional. As my wife packed, our daughter sat beside her, placing her toys into boxes one by one, each movement careful, slow, quiet. She kept her stuffed lion tucked under her arm at all times, as if it were holding her together. Every room felt heavier as we boxed it up. The nursery we painted with stencils of little forests. The hallway where our daughter had taken her first steps with her braces. The living room where we spent nights laughing, unaware of the danger building next door. It hurt to pack away the memories. But some places stop being homes long before the boxes come out. On our final morning, I stepped outside alone into the early air. The sun was still low, painting long shadows across the backyard. I walked to the exact place where Karen had dug her shallow grave. The soil looked peaceful now. Grass had begun growing back. The wind brushed softly over it, smoothing it like a mother's hand on a child's hair. But I could still see it, the mound of dirt, the trembling fingers pushing through, the terror in my daughter's eyes. I stood there for a long moment, letting the memory wash over me, not to relive it, but to close it. Karen wasn't here anymore. Her loyalists weren't here. This ground no longer held power. I whispered into the quiet morning, "You'll never hurt her again." Then I turned and walked away. We loaded the last boxes into the car. My wife stood holding our daughter, her arms wrapped around her protectively, the way a mother shields not just a child's body, but her soul. "Ready?" she asked softly. "More than ready," I replied. As I shut the trunk, our daughter reached out her small hand toward me, and I kissed her forehead gently. She didn't speak, but she rested her head on my shoulder, and that was enough. She trusted me to take her somewhere safe, somewhere far from here. The engine started. The driveway felt longer than usual as we rolled down it for the last time. The house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, first a shape, then a blur, then nothing at all. The neighborhood looked almost peaceful in the morning light, houses sitting quiet and pristine. But beneath that refection lived scars no fresh paint or manicured lawn could hide. As we turned the corner, leaving the street behind forever, I exhaled. A deep breath I felt like I had been holding since the day Karen lifted that shovel. A new beginning waited ahead. A place not ruled by fear. A place not twisted by power. A place where my daughter could learn to feel safe again. Karen believed she was enforcing rules. Karen believed she had authority. Karen believed she could shape the world around her through cruelty. But she never understood the rule she could never break. You don't harm a police chief's child and expect your life, or theirs, to stay the same. And as our car disappeared down the open road, the sun rising before us, I realized something powerful. Karen had taken our peace, but she did not take our future. That belonged to us again.